Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in today for more of our leadership content. It is our hope to develop leaders, whether that be in the church, in the home, or in our city, in our community. And so we're glad that you're here. Please feel free to join with us as we meet every first Friday of every month for our leadership lunches. But you can find more information on our website at www.declarationchurch.net. Hey, we are super glad that you guys are here today. First Friday Leader Lunch, the first Friday of every month. We know that you're here for a purpose. We know that you have leadership gifts, you have leadership potential. And so we know that your leadership matters, whether that's leadership to your family, to your church, to your business, to wherever you're leading. And so it's our hope this month and every month to equip you with leadership tools for that work. And so super excited about this month, December 2020, we are going to be talking about organizational culture. Organizational culture. What's fascinating about this idea of culture is that we understand culture when we talk about going overseas. If you've ever traveled overseas somewhere, maybe Africa or Asia or Europe, you're like, man, this culture is different. They eat different foods. They dress differently than me. It's very tangible. You can see that difference. Where culture becomes a little more ambiguous is this idea of organizational culture. And I think it's ambiguous because we're so ingrained in our culture. But I want to give you an example of where I saw organizational culture maybe not in the best light. A couple years ago, we went to a restaurant and I love going out to eat. I love trying new foods, that kind of stuff. And we went to this restaurant, had a horrible experience. We went back again. I'm like, you know what? Maybe they just had a bad night. Maybe things were just going bad. We'll give them another shot. We went back to that restaurant. Bad experience again. I mean, the feeling was bad. The environment was bad. Something just felt off. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but you just go in a place and you're like, something's not right here. I can't put my finger on it. It's just not good. But we kept going back to give it another try because the food was actually good. We enjoyed the food. It was just everything else that was not good, not up to par. And I remember I had swore that place off. I was like, I'm never going to eat at that place again. I will specifically choose a different restaurant if I want that type of food. Well, fast forward about 2 years. I hadn't visited the place in years. And a friend of mine scheduled a meeting for that restaurant. I tried to talk him out of it. He was like, no, I really want to go here. I was like, let's go somewhere else. Let's go across the street. I'm bribing him not to eat at that restaurant. Well, he was like, no, let's go. So we went in, hadn't been there in a couple years, and I'm greeted at the door by the hostess. And I was like, okay, this is a little different. I walk in, our server was kind, our server was prompt. Very respectful. Matter of fact, the manager even came by our table to visit with us. The place was clean. I'm looking around. I'm like, something is different. I finally asked the manager when he came back by again. I was like, hey, some things have changed here, or what's going on? He goes, oh yeah, we're under new ownership and new management. And I was like, that makes sense. Because it is a completely different feel. You see, what they had changed was not just the owner, not just the management, but they had changed the culture. I don't know if you've ever had a similar experience like that, whether it's with a business, maybe it's a hotel, maybe it's even with a church where you just walk in and you go, something's off, or maybe something's really good. You can see this in positive culture things too. As many of us here love Chick-fil-A, right? Chick-fil-A, you just walk in, you're like, this place is amazing. I don't know why. It's why their lunch line is literally wrapped around their building at 4 o'clock. I literally drive by that place every day about 4 o'clock, and the line is wrapped around the building, the lunch line. It just blows my mind. But they have a culture there, right? It's why every time you ask for something or you say thank you, what do they say? It's my pleasure. They have a culture there that's really good. And it's not just that their chicken is that much better than everybody else's. It's the culture that we're enjoying. The same is true with Apple products. I don't want to embarrass anybody if you've got an Android, but I would love to know how many of you guys go, yeah, I rock an Apple phone, and I've never even thought about getting an Android. It's why we laugh and mock our friends who carry Android devices. We're just like, why are you not with it? But there's something about it that the Apple company has said, hey, our products are superior. Maybe it's because they come in that really cool box that you don't ever throw away, and now you've got like 10 of them stacked up in your closet. You're never going to need that again, but you're like, no, this box is important. They have created a culture around their products that goes, hey, this is superior, all right? All this to say, culture counts. Culture counts. This is the difference that culture makes. I know for me, in my career, my professional working career, I had worked at 4 different organizations before I'd gotten to a place that I considered a cultural fit. In all 4 of those places, there was a little uneasiness in me. I didn't know if it was something wrong with the place or something was wrong with me. I really didn't understand. Many of these organizations were really great organizations, but there was just something off. When I landed at that 5th place of employment, I finally realized I have found my cultural fit. All of their values, all of their people, all of the things that they were about made sense to me. And I finally realized it wasn't that those places were necessarily bad or wicked or wrong. It's just that this place fit me culturally. You see, I want to define culture for you because I know, like I said earlier, it's hard to put your finger on it. It can be a little bit ambiguous. I heard one guy describe it like this, that culture is like rebar. You know what rebar is? Some of you guys have done construction or know about construction. Rebar is what's holding this building together. It's the pipes, it's the metal framing that is keeping this building up. Now, we can't see rebar, right? But rebar impacts and affects everything about this building. That's the same as culture. Now I want to define culture for you, because if you think about it long, you get the word culture from this idea of agriculture, right? That's where the word culture comes from. It's literally the culture of the soil. I've heard a couple people say this. They said your culture is the combination of what you create and what you allow. What you create and what you allow. It's like a farmer, to go back to the agricultural example. A farmer wants to create a certain crop in this field. And so he will cultivate that. He will plant that seed. He will cultivate that seed. He is trying to create a certain type of crop in that field. He's also allowing certain things to live there. He doesn't want weeds in there, so he's throwing pesticides in there to kill off anything that's not what he wants to create and cultivate. One of my favorite quotes is Peter Drucker. He's an organizational leader. He's got books out. He says this, that culture it's just the way we do things around here. That's a very simplistic definition for culture, but I think it's really good. It's what we do. It's what we value. It's who we are. All of these things lead to a product of culture. So here's my big question. How do we cultivate a good culture? How do we cultivate a good culture in your family? How do you cultivate a good culture in your place of employment? How do you cultivate a good culture wherever you worship? A couple of things. I want to give you 2 things. Number 1 is you need to evaluate your values. Evaluate your values. And what I mean by this, you want to identify 2 things. 1, what is unique to you? What is unique to you? If you've studied business at all, you've probably heard of the illustration of Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines started up their business in Dallas many, many years ago. And it's kind of a funny story because they didn't have any planes. They didn't have any pilots. They didn't have any crew members. They didn't have anything. And they started this business with this idea of this value. They said, we began our business in order to democratize air travel. That was their hope. Because in those days, flying in an airplane travel was only for the rich and the famous. That's who flew. And so Southwest Airlines had this idea that they go, hey, we want to begin chartering affordable, short flights that everyone can access. That everyone can access. You see, that's a very unique business value or business model in the airline industry in the 1960s. Nobody else was doing that. And so this is what's led Southwest Airlines to be the largest airline carrier in the world today. They carry more passengers today than any other airline in the entire industry. That was what was unique to them. In the same way, God has created all of us uniquely, right? And so there are certain things that you value more than maybe your neighbor, more than your best friend, more than whoever. What are those things that are unique to you that you go, hey, I value this? We've got to begin to think through those if we're going to not only cultivate a good culture, but be a good cultural fit for the places that we're engaged. Secondly, second question that we need to identify as we evaluate our values is this: what are the things that you love? What are the things that you love? When we planted this church 7 years ago, it was our heart, my wife and I's heart, to say, hey, we want to be a church that reaches the unchurched, that reaches people that are not religious, that don't really care about God. That was where we began from day one. That was something that we loved. And so because of that, we wanted to find people to join our team that had that same vision, that had that same value, that loved the same things that we love. We need to identify the things that you love and then reinforce those things. In the same way, there are certain things that you're going to love, whether it's a business. If it's your highest value, I want to make money. Then you need to get in a business or get in an organization that has those same values that you have. All right? It's also best to identify the things that you love. It's the easiest to identify the things you love in the people that you respect and admire the most. And this gets into our second thing. Not only do we want to evaluate our values to create and cultivate a good culture, but we want to pick the right people. All right? We want to pick the right people. So every good culture is reinforced by good people. Every good culture is reinforced by good people. You can slap values on the wall all day and talk about them, but if you don't have people within your organization living out those values, it's not going to work. You have to have people, good people, that are living those values out. Back to my example about Southwest Airlines. When they started their company, I mentioned earlier, they didn't have any pilots. They didn't have any planes. They didn't have anything. But they said, we don't want to hire crews from other airlines. We want to raise up our own people. And so they had these values in the very beginning that said, we want to cut cost and we want to have fun. Which in those days, when you're catering to the lifestyles of the rich and famous, having fun's probably not a priority for those people. But if you've flown Southwest Airlines lately, you still know they have that value. The steward, the flight attendant comes on and they're sharing jokes and saying funny things, but they wanted to create their own culture. And so you know what they did for their first stewardesses that they brought on their planes? They hired Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders. Because they were like, if we want to have fun, these girls know how to have fun. That's what their whole life is about. That's what their job is about, is having fun. And so they said, we don't only want to hire Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders to promote and embody this value. We want these ladies to wear go-go boots, right? It's the 60s, it's the 70s. I mean, there's nothing more that says, I want to have fun than go-go boots, right? And so this was their deal. This was their thing. This was their premise. We want to have fun. And so what they did is they went out and found people that embodied those values. Here at Declaration, we started a couple of years ago realizing, man, we may or may not have lost our way on our staff values. We started to kind of grow. We were just kind of throwing people into places, into positions. And so about 2 years ago, our staff said, hey, we need to nail down our organizational values. This is how we want people to live. This is how we want people to behave. This is how we want people what we want people to value. And so we pulled away and said, hey, what do we value? And so we came up with the 5 H's. All right, 5 H's. We were going to do 4 H's, but then that's the whole 4-H, and people thought it was like an agricultural thing, right? So we went with 5 H's, and here are our 5 H's. We want healthy people. That means spiritually, emotionally, physically. We want humble people. We want people that are honoring. We want people that are humorous, and we want people that are hardworking. Now, what's fascinating is you're going, well, how did you get to that, right? Because some of this is unique. There are other churches in town across the street, maybe even here, that would go, humorous is not one of our values. Like, why does that matter? That was unique to us. But what we wanted to start doing, and I'll get to that here in a minute, what we wanted to start doing was finding the people that embodied these already. And so we began to look at people on our team or people that we knew within our church or within our community, and we said, hey, we love this person. Why do we love that person? And I can remember conversations back 2 years ago when we started talking about this idea of health, emotional, spiritual health. And we were like, you know who embodies this really well is Liz and Christina. They embody this thing really, really well. And so we want people like them that are aggressively pursuing spiritual and emotional health. And what's happened to that is we continue to reinforce that. We continue to fight for those things. We wanted people that were humble. And so we looked around our team. We're like, who's humble? And we saw Hunter, and we're like, man, Hunter, especially for as young as he is, loves humility, fights for humility. When he struggles with humility, he's quick to come back and go, hey, man, I missed it. I'm so sorry. He fights for humility. And so we're like, we love that about him. We want more of that on our team. And so we began to go, hey, this is what's the most important. We want to cultivate this. We want to guard it. And so we talk about it. We talk about these values all the time. We develop it on our team. We reinforce it. We have done little things that when we see those things in each other, we try to honor one another. And we go, hey, I see this in you, and I love it, and it's beautiful. We want those things coming up. But we've also learned we need to hire to it. And so the funny thing about the humorous value, how we've started to hire people to that value, is we've started asking people in the interview process, hey, tell me about the best joke that you've played on somebody recently or that somebody's played on you. And it always catches them off, right? Because they're thinking we're going to ask them these huge theological questions or, have you shared your faith recently? And we might ask some of those things, but we want to know this. We want to know, are you a fun-loving person? And sometimes they'll kind of get stumped with that. They're like, I don't know, I don't have. And it doesn't mean we're trying to find the funniest people in the room to be on our team. But what we want is people that have a sense of humor. Why? Because we like having a good time. We like laughing. We like playing jokes on each other. We like pranking each other. It doesn't mean you have to be great at pranks, right? There's a lot of people on our team that really aren't good at playing jokes or picking on each other or whatever, but here's what's fun about it. They have to be able to receive those things. And it's lighthearted, it's good humor. They go, yeah, I enjoy this. And so here's where this has worked out, is we have created a culture where our team loves to come to work. Our team loves to be together. We love to laugh. We love to have fun together. This value has grown in our team. And so we want to fight for those things. We want to develop those things. We want to cultivate those things over and over and over. In conclusion, culture counts. The culture of your family, the culture of your organization, the culture of your church, the culture of your team, it counts. It counts more than anything else that normal businesses begin to think of. Strategy, vision, all of these things. If you don't have culture, you're going to have a lot of problems. If you don't have a good, healthy culture, you're going to have a lot of problems. Peter Drucker said this also. He said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Greg Hawkes, a corporate culture specialist, said this, that culture trumps leadership, it trumps vision, it trumps policy. Intentionally cultivating culture makes all the difference in the world. And so as leaders, we need to constantly cultivate this culture. We need to tend it like a garden. We need to guard it from predators. It needs to be nurtured, and we need to constantly cultivate our culture.